Welcome to another Well Workplaces LinkedIn Live. And today I'm really pleased to be chatting with Jerry Kennard from Evoke Projects. Jerry, how you going?
Yeah, good, thanks. Thanks, Tom, and thanks for inviting me on your show. I've been watching your content come through, and it's, as I was saying before, it's always awesome to have these conversations around some of these content, because everyone's got in the same boat at the moment with the year that we've had, and I think you're probably asking a lot of questions that everyone else is wanting to know the answers to, but got no one to ask, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for your time again. I've called today hybrid working, the best of both worlds with yourself, mainly because you're in the game of, I suppose, fitting out, offices. You're definitely, no doubt, in touch with a lot of employers or property groups, perhaps, that are maybe considering, well, what is the new way of doing things, and no doubt you're having lots of conversations. So I thought today, if I can ask you probably a bunch of questions that you hear every day, and then we can share that with our community. At least then everybody, maybe we can take something and learn something from your expertise in this area. But I thought maybe before we get into that, Jerry, I might just ask you a couple of questions and let you introduce yourself to our community. So firstly, big existential question: who is Jerry?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So I'm the founder, CEO, and team leader of Evoke Projects. So if no one knows who Evoke is, we specialise in workplace and healthcare design and fit out, as you say, construction management, all those aspects of it. I often say, look, design is our passion. Yes, we do the creation as well, but design is sort of our focus from the point of view that we feel it allows us to make the biggest difference to the health and well-being of the occupants of any space. But for us, it's around workplaces. Yeah.
I love it. And that's actually where we initially started our connection was probably a few years ago at one of the health and wellbeing expos. And what really stood out, Jerry, was your passion for design and how it can impact the health and wellbeing, which was quite unique and quite early thinking, I thought, in the construction type space. So yeah, well done, mate.
No. Look, at the end of the day, it's one of those things. When you're passionate about a topic, it becomes fun. It's not work.
Exactly. Yeah. And we've had lots of passionate chats about wellbeing and design and things like that. I'm interested, Jerry. What's wellbeing mean to you personally?
To me, Tom, because obviously the word wellbeing gets flung around quite a bit. And people often say, well, what does it mean? What's well-being? And I go, well, it's a holistic idea, isn't it? It's so much difference. It's a completely different situation to just wellness. I often like to refer back to the definition by the World Health Organization when it comes to, what their definition of health is. They say health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And I think that really touches on that holistic aspect of well-being. It's the physical, it's the mental, and the social health. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I really remember actually learning the WHO definition at uni. And really, my background's physiotherapy, obviously we learnt a lot about the physical side of things. But what always got me was that you can have someone in front of you with maybe a physical ailment, perhaps, but there's so much more to it. So then I got really myself personally just definitely getting into the mental health aspect, or that mental pillar. And what I've loved about, say, the well-building standards, and also chatting with people like yourself, is also thinking about, well, in the macro environment, such as a well-designed, well-lit, great design space, how that can actually impact your feeling of well-being as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's that mental aspect that has been missing in so many industries. And to be honest, the impact that the physical space can have on our sense of well-being, and sense being our feeling, is huge, massive.
Absolutely, yeah. And with our experience with working within big organisations, we've seen them go from 10 years ago, having people come into work 9 to 5 and really, going to that one desk, having their own desk and having a sea of desks as their environment. And then you would have been amongst it as well. But at that time, then everyone's all right, let's go, hot desking and agile working and all those things that have happened over the last decade. That's created some great opportunities for the physical environment, the built environment to improve. And then now throw in a pandemic and things are changing again. So
yeah, absolutely. Having said that, I always like to dwell on the silver linings, and I think we've talked so long about what the future of work looks like, and with that whole flexibility piece. And to be honest, I think that's the silver lining of COVID, is that it's brought the future to the present, which I think is a plus. And I think it's probably just more about helping companies navigate what that new normal looks like once the dust settles.
Yeah, well said. Because a lot of companies at the moment are certainly looking around, going, "What do we do?" and maybe waiting for a good example to lead by. And you would have seen the likes of, say, I think it was Spotify last week talking about work from anywhere policies kind of coming up in the media, and then that creates maybe some anxiety, or perhaps some happy employees thinking, oh, this might be the way it just goes. But yeah, just as the dust settles, things will become a bit more clearer, that's for sure.
Yeah Good.
Jerry, can you tell us a bit about Evoke?
Without boring you and those listening, try and keep it brief. So Evoke was born out of the original family business that my father started back in 1969. And as the youngest of 5 sons, we all grew up in the family business. Needless to say, there was there was a need to diversify and create a few different businesses within the umbrella, which is where how Evoke came about. So it used to be a combined office, design, fit out and furniture, and that's been divided up into the furniture is separate now, manufacturing, joinery is separate, and so I now lead up the design and workplace aspect of it, which I'm very lucky, and I think the reason I took that on was because I'm very passionate about design, and I believe you've got to be passionate about something and love what you do to do it well. A bit more on, we've obviously grown since starting about, I think it must be 9 years ago, this brand. So we employ our own designers, estimators, project managers, who all share that passion of creating the ultimate workplace. And I suppose designing through that wellbeing lens, with a view to increasing team and patient wellbeing, because we do the workplace, but we also do a lot in the healthcare medical space as well. Yeah.
I love it. I did notice your healthcare sort of niche as well through some of your messaging and stuff, and that's great, because that must help you stay connected to the wellbeing messaging, and understanding that as well.
Absolutely. Actually, that's an interesting thing you point up, because I had an experience a couple of years ago where I became ill, and unfortunately I had a lot to do with medical practices and the whole fraternity, and it struck me actually how the medical space is about health, but there's not much of a focus on well-being, and especially well-being of the teams that work in those places. So that actually opened my eyes to the opportunity that I thought we could actually add value to an industry that's, I would say, predominantly been behind the office workplace, so to speak, or the commercial workplace. And I often like that plant analogy. You can't expect a plant to grow in poor environment, and it's the same with the people in any space. Whether it's team, whether it's patients, whether it's clients. it really does have a major impact.
Absolutely, yeah. And for our business at Pinnacle, yeah, it's always been, the big focus has always been, how do you make something look really nice and inviting to come to? But in saying that, I've experienced myself a lot of GP practices where you go in and there's the files are stacked up behind the receptionist, and that just needs even just a fresh coat of paint would make a huge difference. But you can do so much for well-being with so little, I think, from a design perspective.
Absolutely. And I was going to say that it doesn't have to cost a bomb, and I often say that to clients. They go, well, this whole well-being thing, is it going to cost extra? And no, it doesn't. Obviously there's some aspects of it that if you went to the letter of the standard, then yes, it would incur additional costs. But I think we like to keep to the spirit of the thing and design through that lens, because there's so much you can implement in so many ways. And to be honest, a lot of the concepts are around behaviours and processes and putting those processes in place. And I often say, look, we can give you the physical tools, but without implementing the behaviours, you won't get the ultimate result out of the physical space. So we're always keen to promote, other providers and other platforms that can actually help teams get the most out of the space too, which is, we work with obviously guys like yourself and other providers in this space that share the passion of well-being and increasing it.
Yeah, that's right. And using, like, as you're saying, the well-building standards, it's quite, using, even if you're not doing the full standards, just getting some inspiration from it and then putting your own spin on it. I actually, before the well-building standards, or me being aware of it, we started creating our own standards at Pinnacle. We called it the Pinnacle Standards of Excellence, and it went through the whole client journey from start to finish. And all the stuff was actually all around, a lot of it was just about what the client experiences, even when they're sitting in the waiting room. What do they see? What do they feel? What do they hear? And so we tried to create we started calling it the 5 senses project. So we tried to tap into all the different senses. And so we utilised, retrospectively now thinking about it, we've used some of those well principles, and then some stuff that's more just about look and feel and making people feel good when they come to see us.
Exactly right. And it's as simple as that connection with nature, that biophilic aspect. It's so simple to implement, and around promotion of water, drinking water and all that sort of aspects. They're very simple procedures to put in place, and any workplace or any practice can do that. Yep,
absolutely, mate.
Having a knowledge of what is best practice, and the thing about the well standard is it's proven, it's evidence based and science backed, which is, I think that's important.
Yeah, you can't really beat solid bunch of research and science. So yeah, that's awesome, mate. Hey, Jerry, I'm wondering at the moment, what are you seeing in the fit out space? What are you seeing in terms of trends with employers? What are they? Yeah, what's happening? Are they losing their marbles and getting scared at the moment, or are they?
I think there definitely was a lot of that going back about 12 months.
Yep.
None of us knew where we were. It has been an interesting year, obviously, for everyone, to say the least. To be honest, I think employers are really still trying to navigate what their new normal looks like, and especially if they're in a situation, what we've found is of people that were their lease was coming up for expiry, or they're having to relocate. They've generally put that decision off and renegotiated an extension of 6 or 12 or 18 months. But I think people are starting to see now that, COVID's not going anywhere. The vaccine's rolling out, and, even if the vaccine isn't 100% successful, we need to live with a certain amount of this. And let's face it, there could be another one. Who knows? So I think going forward, people are now starting to go, well, let's just get on with it, and drill down and work out what that new normal is going to look like. I mean, predominantly, I would say we've seen sort of 3 key approaches, if you like. One being static, where, and this is not very often, thankfully, where they've a lot companies have come in and said, no, we want everyone back in the office, and they've just proactively managed those that are vulnerable or older or health compromised workers, so to speak, and just ensured that the desk spacing and all has, complies with the 1.5 metre rule, and they've got adequate signage as reminders and visual cues, and obviously the hygiene aspect of it.
Yep.
More common is what we call, or what we've sort of coined the rotation method, where they've sort of tailored it to have half the team in different days, and they've gone alternate desks, still with dedicated desks often, or because obviously the whole thing with the active working or agile working, where you've got hot desks, you've got that whole cleaning piece and that sterilisation aspect of it. But with rotation, people are obviously working from home, and it is a bit of a hybrid. But I suppose it's a halfway mark to the fully flexible, as we call it, where you allow your team absolute choice to work how, where, and when they want to, and I think that going forward, I think that's probably going to be the biggest percentage that we'll see, and hopefully that's the case, because I think that's where we get the best out of our teams. And look, there's plenty of research being done as we speak, but I know some initial surveys that were done at the end of last year have shown improvement, and quite dramatic improvement in productivity method, and also when it comes to retention has also improved. I dare say some of that could have been we're in a bit of a volatile market. People aren't going to move around as much, so that could account for some of that, to be fair. But I think, going forward, obviously what that comes with is assessment of looking at the footprint, and how that footprint's utilised, because whilst there may be some change in the amount required, it's more about the usage of it, because obviously there will be times when the complete team need to in the office for those collaboration times. And let's face it, I think going forward, I think the office is more of a hub and a centre and a community. The well standard talks to community and that connectivity that we need as humans. So I think the office is definitely not dead, and there will be the need for it. I think it's just becoming a slightly different use, if you like.
Oh, that's really all really good points there. And I suppose going back 6 months, a lot of the commentary in the media was headlines like the office is dead, etc. So you're basically saying that the needs are changing a little bit. How you use the space has changed, will change, and that human connection is obviously a critical part of getting things done in a work setting, and socializing as well. There's so much value you can get just from having. We had a lunch a few weeks ago with our team in Melbourne, and the guys in Sydney, and it's a small thing, but it actually was probably one of the first lunches we've had in a long time, and it was just so nice to connect with everyone. You get better relationships going as well.
Totally. And I think, you know as better than I do, that whole connectivity from a mental health wellbeing aspect is so vital. And while Zoom is great and this sort of application is great, it's just not the same connection, is it? I've had it where there's been people that I've been in touch with many times via Zoom, and then when you get together, it's just something different, completely different.
Yeah.
And I think that'll never change, because it's the way we're wired, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That's great. So basically, do you feel, what are the main predictions from you, given you've had lots of chats with your different clients? Are there any key predictions that you see going forward besides the utilizing your space as a hub and a community? Is there any other technical things that you might see?
I think there's probably more of an emphasis required on acoustics and having those spaces to go for sessions like this, so that we're not interrupting the whole office. That has become a major concern because obviously it's a big change. And, I think even if, even if the majority of the people are in the office for the day, Zoom will not go out, or whatever platform you use, video conferencing. I think it's here to stay in a more solid way. So it's really having those spaces that can, adapt, or enough spaces that people can get away and have those quiet sessions. It's one thing for internal meetings, which is fine in the open office, but if you're on a Zoom or a Teams with a client, it's obviously a different kettle of fish.
Yeah. Would it be? It probably wouldn't be a surprise to see companies have their own media room. Is that what you could call it?
No. Yeah. Podcast room, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, but yeah, definitely. Yeah. And we're seeing a bit of that. And I think, to be honest, look, it's one of those things. People go, "What are you predicting?" We don't really know where it's going to land at, and let's face it, it's not a one size fits all. So I really think it's just brought up the need and emphasised that the need for a really clearly defined workplace strategy for every business. It's just got that much more important and more detailed and complex. But I will say that now that the whole world's been educated that flexibility does work, I think it will become more and more about being an employer of choice and offering that flexibility, maximum flexibility, in order to attract and retain top talent. It already was going down that path, but I think it's just become more front of mind for most businesses.
Yeah, really good point on the top, talent attraction and retention. I mean, going back before all this mess, your agile, like your ability to work anywhere. If you could recruit people all over the world, that was a huge advantage. And now it's kind of leveling the playing field almost for these SMEs that can potentially get some great talent from elsewhere in the country or in the world to maximise their output or their performance. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I love it. So I suppose in terms of floor space now, do you feel like companies are going to, it's probably the question that you get asked the most, you probably can't give a generic advice as well, but are we going to see floor spaces shrink or do people just keep hold of their current floor space and try and use it more flexibly? What do you think?
It's $1 million question. And to be honest, I think, again, it comes down to a company by company situation based on their workplace strategy. But I think, there was some pretty big numbers pushed around out there that, workplace is going to reduce by 50, 60%. To be honest, I think majority of the time, there may be some slight reduction, but generally speaking, I think most companies will need a certain amount of footprint that's similar to what they've got now, maybe slightly reduced, and obviously in it laid out in a very different scenario around that more hub collaboration piece. And I think, when we're talking about hybrid, I think it's going to be embraced by most. I see that as, pretty much a given. And, whilst there's always been talk about the hub and spoke model, I think there is a likeness there. Whilst people won't have a regional office, it's changed to be a hub and a work from home situation. If that makes sense.
Definitely does. Yeah, there was a lot of talk about hub and spoke models and all the regional places having their own office. But then I was reading something about it, thinking practically, I'm like, well, surely it's just the home and then the hub, which is the main biggest that you go. Yeah. I mean, if you are living like an hour away from the hub and you're going only to the workplace twice a week, it's probably not a big deal. It's probably still a good deal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, definitely.
Yeah. Oh, that's great, Jerry. Thanks so much, mate. You've covered off heaps, and that big question, I've been asked that a lot as well throughout the work that we do, and I haven't really had the right answer. So I'm glad you've answered that one. Hey, Jerry, back to the well building type stuff that you and I have been involved in, and we've had a chat. At Evoke, how do you use that practically? What are some examples, or how do you how do you get your designers to really apply that kind of lens on it?
Yeah, so as you're aware, there's the 10 concepts, which cover everything from water to air to comfort to, and I think probably 50% of them or close to have a very much a physical impact or a physical aspect to them. And like we said before, talking to the biophilic aspect of it, that's obviously one that can very cheaply, cost effectively have a big impact, and be embraced. Acoustics is another aspect, on the sound concept. And when it comes to water and those aspects and nutrition, I think that's more what we were talking about, the behaviours. So, we can help clients set up systems and processes, or like to do is for those behavioural aspects, point them in the right direction to either companies or web applications that they can implement, to really get out of the physical space. But I think, in essence, that biophilia, from a mental well-being aspect, has probably the major impact. And then even when it comes to air quality and water quality, there's a certain amount that can be easily implemented. But again, it's one of those things that can be done down the track, or we can recommend it, but it's not an essential. And I suppose that's the key thing to clearly articulate, is that rather than trying to have the perfect workplace, you're better off implementing half of the things or a fraction of the things than none. So whilst, yes, it'd be great to all have the well standard certification, it's missing the point, I think, if we don't embrace it where we can in those cost-effective areas. Yeah,
no doubt. You're dealing with looking at budgets as well for different, if you're in the healthcare space, you're not on like this massive budget like a multinational. So therefore you have to prioritize what's important to them, and looking probably at bang for buck, like, what's going to provide the maximum impact for health and well-being for the staff and for the clients that come through.
And there's so much stuff that you can actually put in or embrace in your current space, like an existing workplace. Obviously you've got more scope when it is a complete new workplace designing from the ground up. But I think it's important to really promote that existing workplaces, there's so much they can do.
Exactly. Jerry, thanks so much for your time today, mate. I think you've got some great comments in there, especially around how you utilize at Evoke, how you utilize the WELL standards and how you try and get some inspiration from that. Really good point as well on the office sizes and maybe the maintaining what the size is and maybe just using the space differently. If our audience or our listeners are interested in getting in touch with you to help with maybe a workplace strategy, if you're involved in that part or fit out sort of inquiries, what's the best way to get in touch?
Either LinkedIn or email. My email address is jerryk@evokeprojects.com.au, or else more than happy to take a phone call. I'm always keen to meet clients before I hand them onto the team, just make sure we can add value, and it's always a touch point. It's one thing that I do like to keep in touch with our clients, even though I don't get too involved in the nitty-gritty of each project. I'm quietly confident in my team and their ability, but my phone is always on, so if someone does want to contact me or come back to me or has a question or an issue during the process, I'm always more than happy to chat.
Great. Thanks, Jerry. Thanks so much for the...
No, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. It's good to chat.
Good on you, mate. Take care.
Thank you.
See ya.
See ya.